Hello and Merry Christmas. It's Christmas Eve here. I'm repping the jumper, jolly jumper. Be going to the pub soon, but before I do, I just want to go through my round three game from the Cambridgeshire County Championship. I was supposed to do this on the same video as my round one with my coach, but unfortunately, we spent 30 minutes just doing the first game, and I only had a 40-minute Zoom call scheduled, so I was getting pop-ups saying you've only got 10 minutes left. So I had to just cut that video short, and I'll just quickly do round three by myself. To be fair, in terms of mistakes and accuracies, there's not a lot to look at because um, when I ran this game through Stockfish 16, we actually both played with 95% accuracy. So it's a very solid game, good game, high level for our levels. He's just shy of about 1700, I think. So, sort of 16, 1700 level. Good, good chess on display, really. And it's Caro-Kann again, e4, c6, d4, and d5. He plays the advance, and I play c5. This is known as the Botvinnik Carl's variation. So I think the main line is you get the bishop out first, and then you play e6, and then you play c5. So this just kind of accelerates the process. Same idea. You want to bring your knight to c6. You want to get the bishop out the pawn chain. You want to play e6, and you want to you want to take this pawn um, and play on the c file. Just standard Caro-Kann stuff, very solid. And if they take, then it's exactly the same thing. You go knight c6, um, you get the bishop out. Let's say he just plays here. I mean, straight away you can take this pawn. You can play e6, and if they try to hang on to this, you can always go a5. You're going to get the pawn back basically, and with compensation as well. So I don't believe it's great for white to take. So you don't need to worry about them taking this pawn. You can get it back pretty easily. Um, but yeah, my opponent plays knight to f3. I play knight to c6, c3. This is standard. You'll see this a lot. They just want to bolster their center up. I played bishop g4, bishop e2, e6. So everything we just spoke about, standard stuff in the Caro, and white castles, and then I take on d4. This is actually premature. You don't need to rush into this. I think it's better to just play, knight g to e7 first. For example, again, you don't need to worry about them taking. You can always just, take this pawn back, and then if they play b4, because the idea being c3 is that they can then play b4 and kind of back this c5 pawn up. But you don't need to worry. Just simply g6, and you can develop your bishop this way. And actually, the bishop's going to be really good here. Looking at this, the back of this pawn chain here. Looking at this backward pawn. So, like I say, once again, I didn't need to rush into taking. You don't need to rush it. I can carry on just developing my pieces. The knight comes here, usually goes to f5. The queen comes to b6 a lot, and your general plan is you're going to target this d4 pawn, right? So, if you imagine taking, the general game plan of the Caro-Kann is you're going to play on the c file and you're going to target this backward d4 pawn. You're going to put this knight on f5. So you'll have this knight on c6, this knight on f5. You're going to use your light squared bishop to remove this knight. A positional idea. The pawn is on a dark square. So this is like I say, a positional element to always remember in your games. If you've got a target, so for example, my target in this game is going to be this backward d4 pawn. It's on a dark square, therefore this light square bishop can't have any influence in taking this pawn. But what it can do is it can capture this knight, which is capable of defending the pawn. So by taking that knight, you're eliminating a defender that can defend the pawn and leaving him with a light squared bishop which can't defend the pawn, and getting rid of your light squared bishop which can't have any influence on that pawn. So you're building up the pressure on this d4 pawn. This knight's going to come in, like I just said here. So you'll have one knight, two knight. The queen can come to b6 and target it as well, sometimes with a fork. This dark square bishop can target it at some point if it could work its way to another square. And like I say, on top of this, we're going to be playing on the c file as well. That's just the general plan of the Caro-Kann. Nearly every single game. Um, well, 90% of the time anyway, depending on what they do. Obviously, you've got to always have different plans depending on what white does. But back to the game, yeah, standard stuff. But I did take, which was a little bit premature, but it doesn't matter. And actually, we do go down a different line because he played knight takes d4, and I've personally never seen this before. It's usually always c takes d4, and then obviously your game plan is exactly how I just explained. So this was different. So I took on e2 because I mean you've got to really, can't you? Can't obviously if you take the knight back, this bishop's hanging, so you've got to deal with that first. So I take the bishop, he takes back with the queen, and then from here I play bishop c5 just because usually my mentality is, well, if you can develop a piece with tempo, it's got to be good, right? So I'm developing a piece and I'm threatening to take, and take. So I'm threatening to win a pawn. But actually, we could have transposed back into the normal game plan, like I just told you about. If I took this knight and he took, then actually we just transposed into kind of a standard Caro-Kann game where, I've got this open file and I can target this. I can bring my knight round this way. I can bring my knight round this way. Queen to b6 and just do all the normal stuff like we just spoke about. So it would have probably been better to just transpose into familiarity. But like I say, I went for this bishop c5. And he took, and I took, and I'm happy here because I've just bought another pawn into the centre. So I've got a lot of central pawn mass. I've got this open b file for my rook. It's fairly solid. I'm not saying I'm winning, but it's I should say it's pretty equal. But considering I'm playing black and playing a slightly higher opponent, it's solid. I'm happy here. And white plays queen to g4 here, just putting some pressure on this b7 pawn and forcing me to make a decision. Now, I remember spending a lot of time thinking here because I was considering all different things. For a start, the first thing I considered is sacking it. Do you just develop the knight and let him take this? And then I think I remember looking at maybe something like this. So let him take the pawn, bring the knight out. I'm going to get this open g file at his king. But I just thought, well, he's probably just going to trade the queens. Was I looking at a sack? Was I looking at one like this? No, I don't think so, because I don't really get anything out of that, do I? Because he's attacking the rook. But it was probably that line I just mentioned, knight here and knight here. So obviously the knight from g6 protects the rook, and both these pawns are protected as well. Obviously this one by the king, this one by the rook. So the queen has to make his way back out, and do I get compensation for this open file, this open G file? I didn't think so at the time, personally, and I think the engine agrees with me. And also, again, G6, I didn't want to make this weakness. I mean, look at these weak dark squares, and he's still got a dark square bishop. I mean, he could just instantly, well, he can't instantly, but, this knight's got to come out. This knight has to make a move, so let's just make a wait and move for him. I've got to bring this knight out at some point. Obviously, I can't bring it there because it's covered by the bishop. So, if I bring the knight out, he's just going to come straight in here. So, this pawn's got influence on this square. This just looked really weakening. I mean, it might not be as bad as I'm making out. One of the lads from our chess club who I went to the tournament with, he's a strong player. He actually recommended this, but I didn't like the look of it. I actually just brought the bishop back to f8, and I think the engine agreed with me. The engine said this was the best move. I didn't want to create any weaknesses, and I didn't feel the sack was worth it. So bishop to f8 is just retreat the bishop, defend the pawn. He then plays bishop to g5, which, I mean, maybe knight here would have been better. I just think what this move allows me to do is it allows me to just move the queen out of the way with tempo on this pawn as well. So he's blocked his view of this pawn, and I can move out the way with tempo. So I was kind of happy with this. And he actually brings the queen back to defend this pawn, which he's moved the queen a few times now. I mean, I don't know what the best move was here, but surely just defending it with the rook would have made more sense, bringing another piece into the game. You know, moving the queen 3 times already. He's kind of let me off the hook a little bit there. So I just play h6, just saying to this bishop, right, make a decision. If he retreats, then he gets trapped, so he can't retreat. It forces the bishop to move out the way, basically, and now I can develop my knight. And with this bishop being here and this queen being here, it's obviously extremely tempting that my next move is going to be knight to f5, almost guaranteed. He plays f4, just supporting his centre, and yeah, no questions asked, f5. It defends this pawn, and it attacks both of these, so it resolves all my problems. I'm going to bring my bishop out next castle, and I'm happy. I made it out the opening safe, solid. Got this nice centre, which, you know, I can push and create a pass pawn in the centre here. I was really pleased here. He retreats the queen, and I play knight takes e3. I think the engine did agree with me that this was the best move. I don't know if maybe it was a bit premature though, but what my idea was is what you're about to see. Knight takes e3, queen takes e3, and then I went queen b6. And basically this forces the queen trade because obviously, I mean, he can defend the queen and then I take, he takes or whatever, but his queen's pinned to the king. It forces a queen trade, and after he takes me, it brings my isolated a pawn one step closer to the centre, and it connects all my pawns back together. And now these pawns, I've opened this a file for my rook, and now these pawns just look really good in the end game. Like I just said, I've got a 2-on-1 here. I can create a pass pawn in the middle. I'm going to double my rooks on this open a file, and I really like the look of this end game for me. I've got an advantage 100%. You know, it's not. I'm not going to say it's winning or anything, but I've definitely got the better end game, and that's why I did. That's why I forced the queen trade. I could have maybe played something like queen a5, hoping to get the bishop here and pin him. But let's be honest, he's always going to see that. It's not going to do anything, is it? So I just figured while I've got the opportunity, let's just make an advantageous trade, and I'm happy to play this end game out. So yeah, that was my thought process. He played knight to d2. I played bishop c5 check, just getting a piece out with check, and I was calculating in my head bishop c5 check, king h1, and then bringing the bishop here to e3. Just sort of targeting that and that, but I decided against it in the end just because I thought, well, once he kind of moves out the way, what am I really doing with my bishop? I mean, I'm assuming I'm leaving the bishop there, and I'm going to start to sort of progress my pawns. And then when he attacks it, I can bolster it in with d4. So, I mean, looking at this now, this looks pretty good. This open c file now. This bishop is cemented in by this pawn, but at the time I wasn't sure really. I thought, you know, maybe he's going to move. He's going to maybe play this just to create this, and then he's going to attack my bishop. And I just thought I was getting my bishop locked into an area what I wasn't going to be able to do much with it. But actually, when you play this line out and you can visually see it, this looks pretty strong. But then I don't know. You say that is this just going to end up being a weakness? If he can get his knight to a square where he attacks it, is he just gonna make the trade and win the pawn? So I don't know. I decided against it basically. He played g3, just defending, you know, just making this pawn chain, just solidifying, and I lifted my rook ready to double on this a file. There's only one open file on the board, so we want to control it. He plays knight to b3. He is threatening my bishop, but that doesn't worry me at all. Listen, I went rook to a8. If he was to make this trade, it doesn't change anything. It actually just gives me another open file to target these two pawns with, and it brings a pawn back into the centre. So we've still got the same scenario in the fact that we've got a 2-on-1, and I can create a pass pawn. So I would have been very happy with this trade if that had happened. If we'd got, this position, I've got targets. I've got my rook. I mean, I'm threatening this straight away for a start. So, even if he were to defend it, I can then bring my rooks back over and threaten that one and push this, make a pass pawn. So I was really happy going into this end game. But he didn't take the bishop. He played a3. And was it about here I was looking? Sacrifice. Yeah, there were. I may have been looking at something like this, and I remember my opponent talking to me about it after the game. He said there was a moment where I thought you were going to sack, and I think this was the exact moment. Do you sack a piece for 2 pawns, but you've now got this 3-on-1 situation? I don't think the engine doesn't agree with it. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, maybe it's harder to defend. You know, the thing you got to be careful always listening with engines. I always say what I'm always explaining to you what the engines say, but in reality, sometimes you have to ignore them because sometimes from a human perspective, it's a lot easier or harder to do things than an engine suggests. Sometimes, in this situation, we're left with a 3-on-1. And the engine will say, "Yeah, this ain't a problem. White's winning." But from a human perspective, this might be a lot harder to defend than it looks. And that's the thing you've got to remember when an engine suggests a move, it's seeing it can see like 30 moves ahead, depending on how deep you run it. And it's rated like 3,000. It's stronger than any human being that's ever lived. So you have to take what they say with a pinch of salt, really. But I didn't do the sacrifice. What I did was I retreated my bishop back. I thought, okay, I want to start progressing these pawns. So my bishop's in the way. Obviously, I can't bring it back here. I wasn't sure about bringing it to e7. I just thought, I know it's probably more active there, but maybe what if my king wants to go this way? And is it enough? I was thinking he's probably going to push this and try and create an open file here. So I just brought it all the way back to f8. I just felt it was kind of tucked out the way there. It was still doing a job on this diagonal. And bishops are long range pieces. They can come into the game in one move. So I brought it all the way back. I believe rook a4 was a good move. Just blocking this pawn and getting active along this fort flank. I think for a few moves the engine kept shouting for this rook a4 move. It does look a good move, to be fair. It makes sense. Kind of simple, very simple, but makes sense. You just small improving moves. You keep your rooks doubled. You're stopping any advance of this pawn, and you're just surveying this fort flank. And the rook can come into the game somewhere else later on. If he tries to make progress, you're going to put pressure on this pawn. So just the rook's doing a similar job, but just in a much more active position. White starts to advance his king to g2. I play c5. I start to get the pawns rolling. White goes back knight to d2. I continue to get the pawns rolling with b5. And then white starts going for some counterplay with f5. White obviously wants to open this f file for his rook. I take because I thought, okay, he can take and take, but if I take, he's obviously going to take back the rook, and then my king can step up with tempo, which is exactly what happens. And I just thought to myself, okay, well this has got to be good for me. I've centralised my king with tempo. I'm now putting pressure on this isolated pawn here. So I figured that was probably a good move, an active move. He doubles his rooks, and then I played rook to d7, which is kind of a strange looking move. But again, I think the engine agreed that this was the best move. The idea being that, like I said all the way along, I want to make a pass pawn down this file by pushing this and this. So just preparing my rook for the support of that pawn. He plays rook f5 to f4. I'm guessing he's just adding support to this fort flank for any pushes. But he leaves a pawn hanging, so I'll take the pawn. But I do realise, obviously, that he can win a pawn here. But I was happy with that because it's simplified. And with my king being more centralised and having a bishop versus a knight and having this 2-on-1 situation here, I was happy to simplify. So that's what we did. I actually bought the king back because once we made this trade, I realised, okay, I wanted to simplify things and go more into the endgame because my king was active. But then I realised, hang on a minute, if I don't bring my king back, he's just going to start swinging over and attacking these from the back. So I started to realise that actually maybe this probably wasn't the best decision and I needed to just retreat my king, which I did. He went rook to b7 and targeted this pawn, which looks like it can't be defended. Well, only with something really passive like this. But even then he can probably just go here. But actually there's a sneaky trick. And my opponent was really low on time now. I'm sure he was down to just a couple of minutes and I still had maybe like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I was up on the clock, and with him not having a lot of time, I thought, okay, this is sneaky. I just played king d6, and the idea is he can't take this pawn, because if he does, I then go king c6, and the only safe square he's got is here, to which I just go here. You know, the bishop covers this, the king covers all these, the rook covers this. He's trapped. He gets his rook trapped. And I was thinking, with him being low on time, maybe he'll fall for this, but fair play to him, he didn't. He just played king to f2, and I played king to c6. He came back to f7, and it was round about here I started thinking, yeah, okay, this is probably just a draw now. He was he was he was playing moves fast, and I was taking my time, so the clock was starting to level out. I went rook to e8, just getting the rook on this open file. He came forward with knight to f3, and I think we were about equal on the clock now, down to a couple of minutes each, and I offered him a draw, and he accepted. So yeah, it was, and like I say, we both played to a very high accuracy. I'll see what chess.com engine says. I don't know what chess.com uses. I think Stockfish 17 now. Yeah, not it's say I played 95 and he played 94. So literally, yeah, there are a few inaccuracies which I think I've already gone over, but it says on here it was balanced and neither player never really had much of an advantage. So yeah, you can see along the line. It does slightly just go down for me. It is slightly into the black, but it was a good game, high level game, and I was happy with the draw. And after 3 rounds, I was on 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 draw, and I was happy going into Sunday with that. So yeah, I'll follow up with my round 4 and round 5 recaps. Have a good Christmas, everyone, and I'll see you again. Thank you.